All right, good. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled April 25th, 2022 school committee meeting. The time is now 6 p.m. and we'll call this meeting to order. As a reminder, if this meeting is being both audio and video taped, and if anybody else is doing so, please let us know. No one in attendance here at central office. It doesn't look like at this time there's anybody in attendance virtually, so we will move forward with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll do a roll call. Kathy, will you start us off?
Kathy Saletti, Recording Secretary.
Gregory Thompson.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Sarah Julio.
Bill Fonseca.
Elizabeth Marcy Boucher.
Emma Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Heather Brown, Director of Curriculum. Thank you, everybody. So tonight we're going to start off with the superintendent's presentation of the 2023 proposed budget.
Okay, so this is our annual budget hearing, and this is both an explanation of what we'll be asking for the FY fiscal year 2023 budget, as well as giving an opportunity for anyone in the audience to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So first thing I'll do is share my screen. Okay, let's get it up on the big screen for all of you. That coming through, Mr. Mackey?
Yes.
Everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Right, so this is East Long Meadow Public Schools budget presentation for fiscal year 2023. And in addition to certainly our SMART goals that you've seen a few times, both at the beginning of the year and at the end of the cycle, and we've discussed them at a number of presentations. We're also realizing that we're building back from a global pandemic. And as we continue to do that, even though we've made strides, we're still trying to figure out what's going to be best to support our students, our families, and our staff. So what does that mean as we continue to focus on our goals where we're really looking at the whole child? And we enter year 2 of pandemic operations. As all of you know, we ended last year in a really good position in terms of COVID cases and enjoying the spring weather and really feeling like the 2021-2022 school year was going to be a return much closer to a normal school year. And certainly that didn't happen. We started our year with a mask debate and then eventually a mask mandate. We had all our health and safety protocols back in place that had been established in the previous school year, which meant that things like food services continued not only with their universal food program, but also with a lot of their operational changes in terms of packaging and presenting food and how we just set up cafeterias in general. Some of the things that we didn't necessarily expect to be as challenging were things such as students throughout our grade levels found it much more challenging to go from a year where they had been remote, they'd been hybrid, and then they came back into school to a year where we began fully in school. and dealing with the regular daily routines and different things that we do in schools and classrooms. And as we know, state assessments from last year, as well as our own fall assessments, showed that we do have gaps, that we need to help move our students and regain really a year that they lost. And in some cases where students might be dealing with more challenges around academics, it can become increasingly significant in terms of their now arduous task of building back and growing. So what have we been doing? Well, we continue to support our students academically, socially, and emotionally. You've heard a lot about that. This year, with this budget and with some of the federal grant funding that we've had, we've been utilizing more personalized learning software to try to meet our students exactly where at the point of their point of learning at the moment. That was poorly said, but I think you got the idea. We established elementary schedules for the first time where we have more common collaborative planning time for our staff at grade level so that they can look at student progress and achievement and then plan for instruction and possible review and instructing material again and continue that cycle. We've this year put in more academic interventions than we've had in years past, and we're doing that throughout all grade levels. Last year, we had started climate and well-being surveys. We continue them this year, and they've actually shown and been very significant in just looking at, hey, where are our students overall in their sense of belonging and feeling good about coming to school every day. And then our professional development, and this is where a lot of our grant money has gone, as we build and move out of this pandemic, has been centered on structuring classrooms where students are feeling safe and comfortable, which means that they're going to be ready to learn. Because if we can't get our students there, it won't matter what instruction and practices we put in place. That's where our students need to be in order to learn. Other things that we have in place and up and running is that last year we used a lot of our professional development to train and build at each building multi-tiered system support teams. They are all up and running. We continue to have check-ins throughout the year, as well as professional development of how they can use things like Panorama to their advantage on a daily and weekly basis. Because of the ESSER grant, sorry.
Your slides
Your slide now, are you changing?
aren't advancing. I don't know if you have to reshare.
Okay.
They're showing for us, but like,
There we go.
yeah,
Not on the
not on the screen.
So what you're seeing on the screen is what people, if there's anybody watching, that's what.
So we've got ours in front of us.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you want me to stay off the screen and stay on the share?
That might make it
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah,
to hear
because we've
more
got
follow
ours.
along, 'cause
We
have
didn't run into that the last time.
No, but it is being.
But yeah,
No,
this
it's
is more
synced.
important.
And now is it synced? Let's see.
Can you tell? Can you tell?
That's the same. Yeah,
It's not-
it didn't change here. So yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Try this
All
one.
right. So we'll go this way. So I apologize. Hopefully,
No, I apologize because I wouldn't.
anyone who's watching, do you want me to review those slides or keep going forward?
No. People heard what you said.
Okay. One of the things that we were able to get in place in addition to the multi-tiered systems of support is we do now have both guidance counselors and adjustment counselors at all levels of our system. And that's huge. And that was through, we finally were able to do that at the 3 through 5 level where we have an adjustment counselor. We've always had a guidance counselor in those buildings. And now we have adjustment counselors. And that was through the federal grant, the ESSER funding to make that happen.
Can I just add, Gordon, that
Absolutely.
both principals at the elementary level said that that's really been a game changer for them. It has helped so much this year. I just thought that was really important for folks to
I think
hear.
it's incredibly important because we know that East Long Meadow is not isolated or immune from the crisis that is happening with basically children's mental health, which has now become a crisis situation nationally. And we're seeing it. The numbers that you're seeing on the screen in this presentation, that's combining what the adjustment counselor and the guidance counselor are seeing. So all I did was I averaged their caseloads that they're seeing on a weekly basis. So at the elementary level, this would be all three schools combined. They're seeing on average 34.5 students a week. Our middle school adjustment and guidance counselors are seeing on average 29 students a week. And the high school counselors, adjustment and guidance, are seeing 20 plus students a week. With that said, we've been partnering over the last few years with River Valley Counseling, and this is a group that comes in with skilled clinicians who can provide more therapeutic counseling at each of our schools. We have now exhausted their capacity at the moment. They are looking to hire more staff, but they're seeing 18 students on the elementary level, 22 students at the middle level, and 19 students at the high school level. And those actually are numbers from the mid-cycle, so that may have increased. Because as they add staff, they can take more of the referrals that we're waiting. So we know, go ahead, I'm
I
sorry.
was just gonna say, looking at those numbers, so our internal staff are at capacity as well, right? They must be with those numbers.
So we're incredibly thankful for the partnership with River Valley. We're continuing to work as sort of a guidance team, if you will, and the MTSS teams certainly are helping support what the work of the guidance counselors and the adjustment counselors are doing, but we certainly are stretching their capacity. And so it's just something that we need to be aware of. These are students, thankfully, who have come to us or presented certain situations and behaviors where we've been able to support and work with them, or families have contacted us. And so it's a great partnership between families and schools once again, but without that support, these students wouldn't be in a situation where they could learn on a daily basis.
Gordon, who else is on that MTSS team besides the?
So you have your guidance counselors, your adjustment counselors, you have administrators, you may have specific teachers, and then your academic coaches. Yeah, so it's a group that is looking at trends and how they might be able to provide more support to students throughout the school, or in some cases, individual students if they're putting in a new intervention.
And just to what you said about the crisis, I have this American Psychological Association report from this January where it's 1 in 5 children have a mental disorder, but only about 20% of those children receive care. And I know it's definitely a crisis right now where kids can't get to therapists because they're just overloaded. So, the more that we can provide support for kids, ultimately they're going to be able to survive and thrive and grow and learn. But I just wanted to point out that this is a major, not just nationwide, but it affects us.
And it's impacting the nation, but we're just as you're saying, we're seeing it. And we know, given that we do have gaps and academic challenges that we're seeing in our students, that we have to provide this support in order to then help them grow academically and start to recover from the past year.
And even just from a logistical standpoint, like if students are leaving classrooms and traveling to outside services, not that they shouldn't, but the more we can provide within the setting of the school, the less minutes they'll be missing from the academic settings.
Right.
So rather than a family having to pick a child up, travel to the site for the services to be provided, and then potentially travel back, or potentially not travel back based on what's gone on or transpired during that.
And also that internal person is on that MTSS team. So they're looking for the whole child, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of systems in tier 1, the adjustment counselors and the guidance counselors are also providing tier 1 social emotional lessons so we can be more proactive and really try to help kids with strategies in terms of dealing with stress and things like that. So
Before.
it's exactly, obviously we can't, we're also dealing with the effects of the pandemic, but helping kids with those coping strategies as well.
And we know that as we work through this, we're going to need to put more things in place. And so we'll be using our federal grants next year as we have, and you'll see that later on in the slides when we talk about the whole picture. But ultimately, the federal grants are here to help us set up and create the foundation in order for us to go forward in the future, because we will exhaust them. And so then it becomes, how do we maintain and continue through our operational budget to allow our students to succeed? So we know that that's over the course of probably 2 fiscal years, that's where we're building to. And hopefully this trend where we're exhausting folks' capacity is a trend that starts to come down. We know this is something I have in every presentation, but we know a systems budget becomes the most strategic factor to impact every student and allow them to have success and reach his or her full potential. Sadly, it's all about how we fund and support our students. And so the budget has that kind of significant impact. One of the things that is interesting, I give you the per pupil expending every year expenditure. And just to clarify, so this is looking at all of a school's expenditure, including what they spend on out-of-district tuitions, including what they spend on administration, what the town spends on benefits. All of that gets captured in this per pupil spending formula. And then the divisor, if you will, is your student body as captured on October 1 of the previous school year. So something that was interesting to me as I was putting this together, and I added a column all the way to the right for you, is that all of a sudden, when you look at East Long Meadow in comparison with the LPVC districts, all of a sudden we went from their 7 districts in the LPVC, and we went from 6th to now 3rd. But it was interesting. I was wondering, okay, why did that happen? That's a really significant jump. And reason being is, if you look, the 2 districts that had the most significant enrollment reduction last year during the time where schools were remote and in hybrid were the East Long Meadow Public Schools and the Southwick, Tolland, Granville regional schools. We were both at 7.2%, and each of us jumped because you had now a much smaller enrollment that's dividing that whole cost. So that was interesting. It's nice to see us jump. My guess is next year you will not see us still in that same position because our enrollment has come back. And we expect that it will continue to come back as we continue to move into what we hope will be a fall where we return to even a much more normalized setting than we did this fall.
So the FY21 for the 7.2% was done like at the beginning of.
So that would have been, to set that per pupil expenditure, it would have been October of 20.
Of 20.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just so people understand that we're like a year almost.
So October 1st, 2020, what our enrollment was, and if you remember, we were completely remote at the time, that is frozen, and that's what the state uses to calculate your Chapter 70 for the next school year.
Okay, we had many families that homeschooled.
Right.
I don't have the exact number, but it went up significantly, as it did in many districts.
Yeah.
Triple.
In the hundred.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been
Typically
kind
they
of
have
talking about that all
handful.
year.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to get to the root of why they're not coming back.
But I just want people to understand that that was from 2020.
Right,
not
yeah, it's a year,
last fall.
it's a year behind.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see when I present next year, what it looks like. Where do we actually sit? Because this October, we actually had an increased enrollment from the previous October.
Right.
And my expectation, although now I'm going out 2 presentations, so to speak, my expectation is October 1st of next school year, October 1st of 2022, we're going to have a higher enrollment than we currently have.
Yeah.
Because I think we will get back some of our homeschoolers as we did this year. We'll get back more. We had people who stayed homeschooling because of the whole mask mandate and mask debate. They decided, okay, you know, August 31st, I'm going to homeschool. And I think we'll get people back. I think we'll also get some of our students back from the parochial schools. You know, especially as maybe they go through elementary or middle, they may return at the middle or high school level. Go
The same-
back to,
The same break points we always talk about.
correct.
And Gordon, I anticipate over the next few years, folks coming into the district, because we're hopefully going to get a new high school. Right now, we're in the feasibility study and,
Hopefully that doesn't affect
Yes.
anybody.
and that will bring folks into East Long Meadow. It will.
I think, and we're moving along in that whole process, the Mass School Building Authority process with the feasibility studies we talked about last meeting. So this is, DESE hasn't done a lot with the DART district comparison this year because the accountability has been so different the last 2 years during the pandemic. But this just gives you an idea of, again, where the state average is last year, FY 2021, actually, yeah, last fiscal year. State average was 19,342 per pupil. Again, we moved up in this comparison, given the fact that our reduction in enrollment moved us up in terms of what the per pupil expenditure was. But we're still not nearing not only the state average, and we're not touching, say, Triton and Sandwich, who are at 21,000. Just to give you an idea, over the years, certainly the town of East Long Meadow and all of you as a school committee support our schools. We have a great reputation, and we've every year, I think, made some pretty good, consistent progress. This gives you an idea of what increases to our overall budget have been over the last 11 years or so. In fiscal 2013, you see we had a 2.9%. In fiscal year 2014, we had a 4.1%. So it's been really 10 years since we've seen anything over, let's say, anything over 3, we'll say, because there's a 2.9 in there. When we get into increases of 1%, or really anything under 2, you can see, such as in 2015, we had 5 positions that needed to be eliminated. In 2021, we had 5 positions again that needed to be eliminated. In this last year, with a 1.5% increase, we eliminated 6 positions. So we know as we continue to move forward that it's going to be labor intensive, so to speak, that we're a service organization, and it's about the staffing and the people to help support our students continue to move forward. And we know that that's not a process, as we discussed when we discussed the preliminary budget that we did present to the town back in March, that's going to take more than 1 fiscal year. And so this year we're seeking a 3.9% increase. The town is in great financial shape. I know that there are town departments that are looking to also grow because this is a time where we can grow. And with the federal money that the town is receiving through the American Recovery Plan and the ESSER grant, we can on both sides build the foundation. But we also have to be aware that we also, have to build our operational budgets to make sure that once the foundation is built, we can maintain that and allow on our side students to grow and allow on the town side services and town functioning in the different departments to grow.
And just a question. I watched the Finance Oversight Committee, and they talked about how this year, not funding capital projects through the operating budget, they're going to fund it through the ARPA or
Yeah.
which is fine, but then Jim Broderick brought up the point about the cliff that produces, because we all are talking about these percentages, and so is the town in terms of, wow, we can all get 4.1%, but it only affects the budget by this much because we're not funding capital projects within this, or proposed to budget, fund them through this budget. So next year, what happens though, when we want to put capital projects back in, right, it will produce the same cliff that we talked about earlier for the town, right? So we're going to have to look at cuts again, because that portion of the budget that all these things are going to fit into, because we're taking capital out, will then need to be put back in with
The
capital
capital
next
is
year.
separate from the operational
But they
budget. It's
fund,
its own.
well, they funded it through though. And so apparently we're not going to fund any of the capital through the operating budget, which we do.
Just for, I think, next year,
Right, but
right?
won't that create a huge cliff the following year when we try to put it back in?
No, because it's not the operational, it's still capital. I don't see it the same way that you do. We need to be strategic. I couldn't.
No,
agree more.
I'm just trying to understand how because I foresee a cliff by doing it, and I think Jim Broderick saw it as well. So I'm just worried that all these percentages, because they talk about how the 3.9 will fit into a 2.1. Well, how does that magically happen? It happens
I wanna
because this year we're
remind
not
folks.
funding capital at the town side, not on our side.
Right, but the 3.9% increase that we're requesting is from one budget year to the next, right? So we have two funding sources for our operational budget, and that is the town tax dollars, and then Chapter 70. So when
Right.
Chapter 70 comes in, it is much higher. This on FY23, it's 800 and I'm going by memory,
Almost
854.
898, yeah,
thousand, something like that. So in reality, it's a much less percentage for the tax dollars. But because we have always done it this way,
Yeah.
we're trying to be consistent. But during those discussions with Finance Oversight Committee, which I think will be happening very soon, there is this little disconnect with, we talk about a 3.9%, and then there's a, like last year, maybe
Talk about how, in order to meet net school spending, basically you have to factor in the Chapter 70 money.
Yeah.
And when Chapter 70 is lower in terms of its increase, that increases the town's percentage. And so that's,
Right, some years it goes up, some years it goes down. So we can take advantage of the increase this year, but it goes down in other years and we don't
right. So I mean,
adjust for it.
I would like to have different
we have.
kind of conversations.
We've had to when we've had to, yes.
Right.
But I'm just worried that the way we're funding it this year, it's gonna affect us next year. And I think we just all have to be aware of that, because I think there's some legitimacy that it creates a cliff, because there is funding for capital projects in the operating budget, typically.
Well, they put in a
Well,
line
separate.
item,
They
$500,000, they'll take $500,000 free, even if it's free cash or however they
but
fund it.
they've always put a line
It's a
item.
line item, but this year there's not.
No, because
So
of,
that's how this all
Or
fits
they
in.
go out and bond for it, and they don't have to do that.
But then they do the funding, they do they pay for the bond though,
Right.
the bond payments.
Yeah.
None of that's happening in this proposed budget. So we're all able to fit in 3.9%, 4.1% into a 2% increase budget. But what that's going to do is next year create a huge cliff. Am I right in thinking that? Because they're going to want to put those payments back into the operating budget.
well, they're gonna fund that line again and it's gonna come from somewhere.
It's, you got to add it on top of what's already funded. So then
Correct.
it either it creates a huge increase in percentage, or you got to start cutting things, which is what I'm saying. If we all add all these things this year, when it's like a smoke and mirrors show, because next year we're going to have to fund capital again.
well, I think anything that's been bonded already, they would have those bond payments.
Yeah, that's separate though. I'm
It is
talking
correct.
separate because
Because there is a line item that
there's
is,
going to be zero this year, or is the
Right.
proposed, which allows us to get these huge percentage increases, all the departments within the town.
or
That's
they
all I'm
cut,
saying.
or
I'm not dismissing the necessity for it. I'm just saying, I'm worried on how they're projecting to do
or
it.
they'll cut the capital projects to avoid the cliff. There's two
You'll
ways
have
to
fewer-
view it.
Wow, then they'll do
Fewer
less
than
than
the
1.1.
I know.
That's not, yeah,
Yeah,
well,
but
but-
all of these funds were given to municipalities and school departments to move the districts forward. That's, I mean, that is in all the language. that
And
comes
but
out.
that's fine, but the portion that we typically fund the capital projects, whether it be through bond payments or use of free cash or however we do it, we're taking out of this budget and we're putting in other FTEs
But we don't really know.
in the place.
We don't know.
That's what they're talking about. They're all talking about it.
Right.
So when that happens, those FTEs will then be there next year, and they're gonna try to add in the capital funding.
You're gonna fund
again,
that line
And the
again.
budget's gonna go balloon.
But what they may do is, basically, they know, looking at the amount of capital projects that are needed in town, school and the municipal side, this gives them a chance to get ahead. And so then they would probably fund, you're right.
That's fun, but don't add enormous amounts of FTEs thinking we can do it magically, because we're gonna have to pay for them next year, is all I'm saying.
We're
To the
actually
town
not.
or to the
All,
school?
a whole picture,
Because we're
grand
only
picture.
asking for 5. I think we're being
We're actually
extremely
not.
We're
conservative.
asking for 3.9%. And the way why we're asking for it is because it fits into this year's budget. That's all I'm saying.
And
It fits into this year's budget because we're not funding capital projects. This would not fit in a typical year's budget if we were normally funding capital the way we funded it in the past and the way we'll fund it in the future. That's all I'm saying. So I'm just worried about the cliff.
But it's also, what's our priority, right? We want to provide the best education for our kids, and we're doing the best we can with the money that we have. And it's only costlier. It's, and we're trying to constantly improve, right? So that funding, there's a direct correlation between how much we spend on kids and how well they do. There's all sorts of research out there. So
And we're in the people business, so 80% of our budget.
I'm just saying,
I-
I think
But
the way it looks is next year will be dismal if we get this funded.
I understand what you're saying, Greg, and I see.
Am I
because
wrong
I'm
in thinking
adding-
that, Tim?
I'm
Tell me the
sorry.
cliff isn't there.
I disagree. I
There's a
think
cliff there.
that we all need to agree that there are grant funds for the school department as well as the town. However, I'd like to see, and I've talked about this, we have 2 adjustment counselors. I think we should be paying them and putting them into the
I
operational
thought that's
budget
what we were
next year.
proposing to do.
We are,
Yeah.
next year,
But we haven't
because that
received
need,
that.
for the
approval.
that need that the kids have is not going away anytime soon.
It could grow. It could
It's
grow.
going to.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna identify more.
But it's an ask.
We haven't,
Right.
exactly, thank you,
But
Sarah.
this is
Yeah.
That's in the 3.9 too.
Yeah.
This is 3.9, but
Right.
that's an ask.
That's
That's
fine, I know that, I'm just saying that this isn't going to be a problem that I don't think any of us in the town are understanding completely. So I'm just hoping that
So I
when you
guess,
talk with finance oversight, if we just get a better understanding of that, because by funding all these extra FTEs townwide collectively, it will create a cliff next year and we will be in some dire straits.
I'd be
Great.
more comfortable to have Steve Lonergan from the town answer that
Yes.
question on capital, seriously, because that is his domain and not mine, so,
Well,
I
but
also-
he's
but
the one
Greg-
also trying to sell it.
so.
Like this fits so well because we're not paying for capital. But we're not seeing next year's cliff that it creates. Jim brought it up slightly, but it was kind of not.
Well, then we can talk about
It's there, it's real. I'm just saying, to fit a 4% increase, 3.9 into a 2.whatever% increase townwide, it's like magic because it's not real because next year we're gonna pay for that. That's all I'm saying.
Greg, I see where you're coming from, and I understand it. I'm saying like, okay, so we have so much money, you're taking some aside, paying this off, and it's gonna increase it. I see what you're saying, but I also feel like when you're talking about we're adding FTEs and what are we gonna do next year? I also see we've lost 11 positions in 2 years, and we didn't lose as a town. We were not that desperate as a town in terms of our financial stability to where maybe that was as necessary as it was. We have to try to at least ask to try to get some
That's
of those
fine.
FTEs.
But
And
let's be
also-
honest about how many positions were added over the 10 years, though, because
Well-
we don't say that on here. We say how many we took away, but I bet we're pretty net zero. Is that fair, probably, Pam?
I don't think that's a
10
fair
years?
assumption.
No.
This is what,
Okay.
7 years for me, and I've only seen those, we have
We've
reduced
added
positions.
And we
No, but
haven't
it's,
added too many. We,
I know we have less pairs than we had 5 years ago.
It's through attrition. Things have just changed
That's fine,
around.
and that's fine, and I know, you believe me, I'm with you on all of how we've done in the past. I'm just saying this year, because we're all going with high percentage increase townwide, we're going to pay for it next year because we're not acknowledging the fact that we're not funding capital projects this year.
so
We're not funding them because we're getting grant money, so we're able to supplant that. And then we can create new FTEs. But once that grant money is no longer there, there's no 2 sources anymore, it's only the same source.
But this is a budget proposal. We don't even know where it's.
I know, but I don't think anybody fully understands the implications.
You're probably-
That's all I'm saying. It came up slightly, and I don't know that they really understand that the cliff will be there. It's real, or am I just, it's real, right, Pam?
I think it has to be for.
I'm asking you because you're the money person.
I know, and Greg, we've talked about the
Okay.
fact that I think we need to think about it. We do need to be strategic. How do we? Those grants go through September, I think, of 2020.
But we shouldn't have FTEs with grants. We shouldn't do it.
Well, then they need to come in the operational budget.
Yes, it's fine.
Correct. So
But we're
trying
doing
to-
that because we're not paying for the capital projects because we're using grant money.
Well, you're making an assumption that we're going to get the
Well, that's what everybody's
3.9 and that
talking
everybody's,
about, yes.
and this isn't just a wish list. I hope everybody out there realizes
I'm
it's
not
not
saying
like
that.
a
Not a
wish
wish,
list.
not a wish.
I'm not saying it. It's just the percentage is high and the town side is percentage is high as well. All the departments seem to be coming in high because we magically can this year, but we can because we're not funding everything.
And sometimes
But on the other side, Greg, just, I'm sorry, Pam.
no, I was just gonna say important to show our
You know, if
story.
you look at, let's look at, other departments, what is their 10-year running record? I mean, at some point, you have to break out of an average of 2% for us to really grow. The years that we did that, look at the unfortunate history here. We got a 4.1, but then the next year we got 1%. So we've
Well, but
eliminated
there it is.
5%.
That's going to happen again next year. I'm just saying that cliff is
So
going
I
to be
would,
created.
I would,
We're going to be back at 1%
I
next
think
year.
we're
And we
gonna be-
shouldn't be surprised about it.
I think
It's going to happen.
we're gonna have challenges next year.
Yes,
But I think
we're creating them ourselves though.
No, I think the whole town's creating them,
Yes,
but,
the town is creating it by adding a
but then you're gonna have
huge
to.
amount of FTEs in 1
So
year.
one of the things
It's
that
a huge additional
I think we
liability.
have to recognize is East Long Meadow Public Schools, in terms of its enrollment, is changing. And one of the reasons we're seeing such a significant increase in Chapter 70 this year is because we have a higher percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged. That's not going to go away next year.
Or 23%.
We're also seeing a higher number of students with really severe special needs. Those are two areas that get calculated in Chapter 70 at a much higher rate. And they just redid that whole formula, which impacted us incredibly positively this year. But I think it will also impact us because those things are not going away. So just from strictly a school standpoint,
Yeah.
you're going to see, I believe, Chapter 70 with another increase similar to this year, next year.
Also, these grants are designed to help with the damage that was done by the pandemic on kids. And if we're talking about not using it for that purpose, and we're just going to continually take away from what the kids need, we can have the best curriculum.
not
We all have the
dismissing
staff
the need for
to
any
actually
position.
implement it.
That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying the way we're funding it was we're funding positions through the grant, basically.
You just don't
We're
see
not.
it. He doesn't want to see
The
us
town
get
is,
rid of
right.
it. Of course. And I understand it, but I
It's just
still-
coming. I think if we all do this townwide, where it's going to come next year, that we're going to see that one again.
And I think that needs to be part of the discussion.
Okay.
So that people are cognizant of it
Yeah.
and that we plan for it.
Yeah, which there's, I think
You
there's
know,
enough.
through our budget development, we constantly plan for that kind of thing.
But I also like to hope, and I know they have always been very supportive of us. I hope they see that our trials and tribulations in terms of our students. It's our students, it's the kids.
Yes.
It's the junk that they've had to deal with for the last couple of years. And I hope that they see that moving forward, that, okay, yeah, like, not that every department doesn't deserve more money, but ours directly impacts our kids. And you know this, I know you know this, and I'm hoping that the town can see that moving forward, that it's not like we're better or worse than any other group, other than the fact that we're dealing with our kids. And it has been, and I hope they see that. So like next year, if we don't get the money, if we put capital back into the budget the way it was, that is still understood that we're still just trying to recover from this. But I'm not saying the library isn't, or the police department
the
isn't,
thing,
or the
they're all
fire
trying to-
department isn't, they've
So
all done
Beth,
it.
let me ask you
But
this.
this
Should we
is
add
kid thing
15
too.
employees townwide this fiscal year? Should we just add 15 employees, full-time employees?
I don't
15?
know, I mean, I don't know
Because
how
we're
many,
asking for half.
I
seven.
don't know how many,
think
I don't know what
the
the other
discussion
departments
needs to continue.
reduced.
But it
I don't
doesn't
know what
happen.
the other
None of the
departments
discussion
reduced.
happens because the finance oversight committee sits in a closet. Not that your office is a closet, Don. Yours, actually, I take that back. Right, I love you, Don. But you know what I'm saying? Like, so they're like secluded. They're not elected, and they're coming up with these numbers, and they're getting input from finance, which is fine. But I don't think they see the whole picture. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm not in those rooms. I'm just telling you what's going to happen next year is we're going to hit a cliff.
And their
coming.
job is to
If
make
you fund
us,
this.
but I get it, their job is to make us even, and they're thinking this, and they're not seeing the human side of it. I also see we've lost 11 positions. I don't know what the other departments, which is half the rest of the town in
Right.
terms of budget, what they have lost in terms of employees. Have they lost employees? Have they had to give up people? I don't know that, but I know that, you know, asking for just half back when the time comes of what we've
Yeah.
lost, I don't think is grasping too much.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. I know,
It's not,
you're right.
you know.
Yeah, I'm not saying we shouldn't ask. I'm just worried about how it's going down. So it's good.
Second graders who came to us struggling to know how to hold a pencil because they're on computers for 2 years are the future leaders of East Longmeadow.
They are. They can't cut. It's fascinating.
Well, I'm just saying, these are the things that we're trying to
I
help,
know.
you know, accelerate.
And good, but here's my real point, I guess. Let me just be as blunt as I can about it. These are valuable things for the students of East Longmeadow. The town side is asking for many positions as well. To think we're gonna get the 7 that we're asking for, and they're not gonna get all they're asking for, we're living in la la land. I think a lot of the departments will get 1 or 2, and maybe we get 1 or 2. I'm just saying, in the whole grand scheme of this discussion, as we're rich in cash all of a sudden this year, should have some sort of focus that we don't seem to have, I guess.
Well, we're gonna be thankful for what they give us. And
Yes, we are.
pray that we get some of these kids.
You're
some
right.
of these-
Okay, that's all I have to say about that.
But I
And,
disagree.
and, you know,
Are you meeting with them this week, the finance person?
Thursday.
I think we are focused on what we're asking for. I don't think that we're asking for.
That's
things that are
fine,
going
but
at
don't be
once.
surprised when they're give us 1 or 2 and the town gets 8 positions and we still come in at,
That
wow, we
doesn't-
came in at 1.9%, but
That
guess
doesn't
what?
speak against
We're all gonna have
our
to fit-
capacity of being
We're all gonna have to fight against it next year. That's fine. It'll work out. I have faith. How about that?
I just think we need to be cognizant that we're not throwing darts at a dartboard here. Like, this is not willy-nilly. This is very strategic in terms of the positions that we're asking to reclaim in many cases, because it's meant to target very specific gaps that are occurring, whether it's social, emotional, or academic. So I just want to be careful when we speak that we're not talking about our proposed positions being
Right.
unfocused.
And I'm not dismissing the need for any of the positions that we're requesting. That's not what I'm doing, but we're asking for 7 positions and the town is asking for at least that many. So to say that we should just add 15 positions to the town is a lot for me to swallow as a taxpayer of East Longmeadow. How would I just put it that way? That's all I'm saying.
But ours aren't new either, just to remind you. And I do have an article, I think it might be that same article. I just want to say, do schooling resources that cost money matter? Yes, schooling resources that cost money are positively associated with student outcomes. These include smaller class sizes, instructional supports, early childhood programs, and more competitive teacher compensation, which permits schools and districts to recruit and retain a higher quality teacher workforce. I was just looking on the statewide, out of 318 districts, we are 220 for our average teacher salary, which is at $77,000. A high is $122,000 and a low, I think, was $39,000. We're at $77,000. I guess my point in saying that is we're not asking for more. We're asking for just what we need to move these kids forward to where they need to be. That's right. So, thank you.
And I know we've had this conversation. It's not uncommon across the Commonwealth for school districts to get 4% somewhat consistently.
Oh, it's not.
4%.
Yeah.
How does that fit into Prop 2.5 though? I know state aid can change, but it can't change that drastically every year. And
They
I know
figure it out.
valuations can change.
They figure it out.
Yeah, but I've said my piece. It's fine. I hope we get positions. I hope we fund a lot of these things. I'm not saying that. I'm just worried about how we're all, the town is making decisions right now. And you're the ones I get to talk to about it. So I did. Thank you.
Okay. But to pick up on what Mrs. Trulio said, we are very focused on, we know that over the course of 2 years, we've reduced 11 positions. We're not asking to recover 11 positions. We're trying to be very strategic. These are in no particular priority. I'm just going basically from our youngest school to our oldest school up until the final one, which deals with a shared teacher. One of the things we know, and we've discussed this, having reviewed the preschool model that we're proposing for next year, is that we're going to need a 3rd preschool classroom to really put something in place that's much more successful in meeting the needs of students who are coming in at age 3 and staying with us through age 4 before they get ready for kindergarten at age 5. So we're looking to do that in this budget. That's actually something in terms of having a preschool that's a legal mandate. So, continuing to have our preschool evolve and make progress makes sense. It's something that we've been looking at, as you know, for the last few years. But this year, with the review, it really was able to move us forward. We're looking to have an elementary math coach / interventionist so that we're not sharing one between the 2 3 through 5 schools, Maple Shade and Mountain View. We know from our academic data that math is where we have more of our challenges. And so the more that we can devote on each or at each school in terms of how we're working with our staff in continuing to put in the best instructional practices, as well as running interventions, because we are running more and we're trying to do that differently than we've done in the past. With that said, looking at the middle school, they're actually asking for a student intervention coordinator who would oversee all the interventions, teach one of their intervention classes, and work very closely with the social emotional teacher in terms of how they both provide the social emotional support, but also the academic support, because many times you're needing to provide interventions with that classroom. And so this would be a coordinator that could really help our 2 administrators at the middle school, as well as the coaches. We're looking to redo the second assistant principal at the high school. Right now they run with 1 and, as you know, an academic dean. One of the things that you've heard the high school present that we're trying to do, which I think will be a huge support for our students as they both transition to high school, but then progress through the high school and prepare for life after they graduate. They want to build a house system with our counselors and our assistant principals, so that you're having a team that works with 9th and 10th graders, and you're having a team that works with 11th, 12th graders and deal with those specific issues, academic planning and support. That group would also be involved in looking at how interventions are used and how we utilize the program that we've just begun this year, which is having our students all universally take the PSAT and really start to use that as a support in programming for our students. Then finally, going with the same theme that we talked about with the math coach, sort of finalizing the shared teachers and giving both 3 through 5 schools teachers that teach, in this case, art specials, and in terms of the coach, that they have the supports they need and we're not sharing between and stretching people's capacity, as we've seen in previous slides. So,
And
Go
this
ahead, I'm
would
sorry.
also allow for teachers to not only plan for interventions, tier 2 interventions, those are the ones kind of within their classrooms, but execute them
Right.
with this schedule. So that kids are getting that more of that differentiated instruction, targeted differentiated instruction.
So as I started presenting the slide, it's a very focused list. It's one that we've gone through with the leadership team, with all of you earlier in the year, to make sure that what we're putting forth is both going to help move the district forward, but is also fiscally responsible. And it's not, and I'm just going to introduce this slide and then have Mrs. Blair kind of walk us through the different pieces of it. But when you look at everything that we do, the operational budget or local appropriation is not really what the cost of all our programming comes out to be. So if we take this fiscal year, you can see our local appropriation ended up being $32,319,655. But then as you go through the grants, and I'll let Mrs. Blair walk us through that, really the programming we're running comes up to a total of $37,425,300.
So how does it get there? On this slide here, our operating budget for the school department is that first line there, the 32,066,537. And of that, you'll see that salaries is a good almost 84% of the budget. Those are anything that falls underneath the salary line item. So, as I just said, as we were talking, we're in the people business, right? So that makes sense. And this is absolutely normal from school district to school district. They're always up in the low 80%. But underneath there, back in 2010, both the maintenance and the IT department, some of the funds from the school department were actually moved over, is my understanding, to fund IT and maintenance that were the school, and then those departments took them over. So that's where Gordon said that 32,319,655, because that was operational monies, okay, to run the school. But on top of that, as he alluded to, we get federal grants, state grants, private grants. So we have our Title I, and that's $283,000. You can see the bulk of that is in salaries at $243,000, then $40,000 in supplies. We have Title IIA, which is professional development for our staff. So that's all under the salary line there, and that's $50,351. Title IV, refresh my memory. This is
Title IV is targeted to 4 different areas, but one of which is social emotional learning, one is in technology and learning. We are also able to provide funds for AP tests for low income students. So it's kind of more of a catch-all.
Thank you. So that is $20,541. So I have that listed under contract services. We have the early childhood grant. That's $18,297, of which $17,440 goes to offset a salary for the early childhood liaison. We have DPH Comprehensive School Health Grant that our new Administrator of Health Services, Kelly Lombard, oversees. That's an $80,000 grant. And you'll see that we spread that out with salaries of $43,000, supplies, and that's really, I think, sub nurses and things to help the nurse end of the district. And then there's supplies, $20,500, contracted services, $16,500. The next grant is the METCO grant, which, we're always glad to be a part of. And that is salaries, $190,323. That covers our METCO coordinator, as well as 2 teachers in the district, and I think 1 para as well. And then contracted services, it offsets the transportation. That's $142,615. That total grant is $333,538. Special Ed IDEA, you'll see that the bulk of that $806,000 grant, $750,000 goes to out-of-district tuitions. Then there were smaller grants that were given, the IDEA ARP grant. Most of that is in contracted services and supplies. As I make my way down the list, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not giving too much detail. We had that new PEBT reimbursement there, which was that was $3,070, which helped offset some of the salaries. So then we get to the ESSER II grant. That's the one that we are currently using. That's $965,000. Still analyzing that to see what we will roll over. I do not anticipate going through all of that, mostly because when I give my third quarter, you'll see that there are some funds that seem to be available in some of the budget lines. So I anticipate probably having those discussions with you on maybe whether we want to use some of the ESSER, move the ESSER expenditures to the operational budget, but that conversation will come after. The elementary ESSER 3, that's the big one. That's $2,230,000. And that is the one that goes through, as I said, I believe it's September of 2024. We have not touched that. I don't think we'll be touching, and no, we won't be touching that until next year. We have $1.3 million in salaries budgeted for that. That's our plan. And most of that is permanent building subs, monitors. Help me out, Heather. What am I missing?
So it's lunch and recess monitors. We also, throughout the pandemic, have, where needed, also hired part-time custodians. Predominantly, these are staff that are under 20 hours, but help us out in crucial areas as you're continuing in pandemic operations, because we have at the elementary level lunches that are going on in the classroom at our youngest school. And so each of those classrooms needed monitors. And then as you're providing that supervision, you're also freeing up a teacher who needs to eat lunch his or herself, as well as have prep time. So we have expanded there. Hopefully, we'll be able to start to move away from using, right, ESSER 2. This year, I think it's predominantly been around operational items to keep our schools running. We've used some of it for professional development, but really, and Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Blair, let me know if I'm incorrect in saying this, the majority of ESSER 3 really is going to be about professional development and establishing new curriculum. That's why we have our curriculum committees working this year. And it allows us to, as I said, build that foundation to have the curricular materials here, have some of the technology here, so that as these grants run out, the foundation's here. And now what we have to do, and that's where the operational budget and the budget request comes in, we have to maintain it and keep that going. So that the federal grants really have been significant, and we're utilizing them now, hopefully, and I'm going to knock on wood again. Sorry, Mr. Mackey, if that messes up the audio a little bit. If we can get away from pandemic operations in our buildings, and we're starting to do that, the grants really can be set up to be utilized for those purposes, which is what they basically were intended to do. It was to do both, allow you to operate and keep people safe, but also build for the future.
How much of ESSER did we use for salary in FY21?
Just what you were doing.
Yes.
Actually, Heather was just doing a
I
report.
have it in the other room. I should have
Okay.
brought it in.
Is it more than that, less than that? 1.3 million?
Oh, no, it's less because
Yes.
we didn't have as much money.
A lot less, probably. Than 1.256 million. So we're going to fund the operating budget with ESSER? Is that what we're proposing? It's a funding source. Is that what
No,
it is?
what we're proposing is that ESSER 3 actually doesn't fund the operational budget. It allows us to do the professional development and
Purchasing
the
of
curriculum purchasing. What we're hoping is by asking for the operational increase, because remember, what you're seeing under the grants, that's not part of our request for the
It's
operational
in
budget.
addition.
That's in addition.
We're just trying to show how much it takes to.
What salaries are we paying for with the $1.26 million in FY22?
So I listed it here, Greg, because we received the grant
Yeah.
this year. So I felt like if I didn't put it on here,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be transparent. So although we have not used any of these funds this year in ESSER 3, ESSER 2 we have, ESSER 3 we have not touched. That will roll over into the next year to be used over the next two fiscal years.
So our salary line item next year in FY22 at $28 million, we won't actually need that much.
Say that
The
again?
$28 million in the bottom of the salary line.
So the point of this whole slide was that we wanted everyone to see and be very transparent on what it really takes to run a school district. It is much more than just the operational budget because of all of these grants. The only thing that's skewing this is the $2 million ESSER 3 grant. So if I were to pull that out, since we didn't use it and aren't going to use it, you'd see that it's $3 million in over what our operational budget is that we don't have to ask the town for because we get the grant funding. So that was the point we were trying to make with this slide.
But we weren't spending approximately $1.2 million of those grant funds on salaries.
Not right now.
Not right now.
Correct, yes.
That's the question you were
But
asking.
why is it? Well,
Well, I put it-
We were
Because
listing it because we have it.
That's a
available.
plan. It's a plan. So I
So we're
tried
not
to
going to
put it
spend
in
$28 million in salary next year, FY22,
this current year.
FY22.
It's actually minus,
We're in FY22.
so this is the current year that I'm showing here. I apologize if I'm not being.
So for
FY22.
ESSER
We're in
2,
22. So I'm showing you the picture for right now.
This is this year.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're not going to spend $28 million this year in
No,
salary.
you can take the 2 million ESSER III grant.
Out of there. So out of
We
that
have not-
37
We
million.
wanted to show all the
Placeholder.
grants.
Yes,
It's a
because I felt like if I didn't put it on there,
Okay.
you guys have already approved the grant, people would say, why isn't she listing ESSER III? So I put it
Okay.
there, so I apologize if it
No, I
caused
just don't
any
want, you don't.
confusion.
You don't want. I just
And the
want to
ESSER
put salary
too.
grants.
Right,
We're
and so
not-
what we would
It's not
do
the
is we would be amending ESSER III's plan, so we're not doing that.
So the initial plan that was submitted to the state had
Had salaries.
approximately
Right,
1 million marked for
because you have to give
salaries.
them, you know, the
You have to
best.
give-
Break it down.
But we didn't use it for that purpose.
Right, okay.
If we have to use it for that purpose, then yes, you get to a funding
Then we're gonna have
cliff.
a cliff again, yeah.
Not only do you have a funding cliff, you halt or extremely limit our ability to continue with the curriculum.
Right.
Think of
Yeah,
years past.
no, I know.
Think of years past, how
Yeah.
many times we have stopped the curriculum renewal cycle
Yeah.
because we've had to deal with a budget request that was cut down ultimately.
So we're gonna amend then our ESSER III.
We would.
Yes,
that's
that's
what
right.
we
Those
have to.
Exactly.
plans
Right.
were submitted at a very different time too.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
So
you're
that
absolutely
timeline for
right,
submission
Sarah.
was
Right.
also at a peak.
Right.
Once we change that, that 1
That 1
million's
million
gonna shift
shift.
over.
It would go
Yes.
over, my guess
Some
is,
of it.
a lot of it. You're gonna see it go over to supplies, contracted services.
Yeah.
Good, that's where it should,
And even the 260 of the ESSER two, not all of that has been used for salary.
Correct.
okay,
Yeah.
good, great.
Which you're gonna see in the quarterly budget report for this year. So this is just giving you the whole picture of if you utilize all the grants,
Funding
what the
sources.
full program could look like.
Okay,
Our hope is that we don't have to use ESSER III for salaries to that level.
so to that point, we funded 2 positions. Can we be part of that discussion if we decide to fund with grants based on the proposed budget from the town? Can we not add FTEs not through the budget process without school committee approval?
No, we would have to come back.
Okay,
obviously, and
perfect, thank you. Cool, thank you. Question answered.
You're welcome. Sorry if I caused some confusion since ESSER III.
So.
No, but I think it makes sense because when you had to submit, it was a very different time. And I think we have to remember, we were one of the only entities within the community that was open.
Right.
So we were providing services to students and needed additional personnel, needed additional supplies in order to make sure that we stayed open.
And we were
Other
very-
departments were not
And I'm still
accepting
ordering,
people.
and I'm still ordering, you know, hand sanitizer and wipes and,
That's just.
tents and, you know, monitors for, what did he say? Just for them?
Yeah.
But it does play a role, like
It
when,
does, yes.
and other departments didn't have to use the federal funds or the state funds in the same ways towards supplies and towards personnel because they weren't accepting individuals back into their spaces where we were.
And there's still this unknown. I mean,
Yes.
heard on the news this morning, the numbers are starting to go up. I don't want to sound like it's, but I'm just saying, like, we don't really know and we have to be prepared
Yeah.
for it. And so, yes, this was just a plan in
And
place.
PPE is expensive.
Let's not hold back either, though. I think, and we've all alluded to it, the purpose of the funds also is to propel us in the
Right.
future.
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yes.
Move us forward.
I know that's our collective.
Yeah.
That's
goal.
the collective
talked
goal, but I
about
think
that.
at the time when they were asked to submit
Yeah.
to the state,
I think it was September of this year.
we were not in the current climate that we're in now.
I mean, who knows what it's gonna look like in September when everybody comes back. Again, it's the end.
Yeah, I just don't want the cliffs, that's all. I'm anti-cliff tonight.
Which is why, Greg, we're trying to get those
Yeah, there you go.
positions into the operational budget so that we are not.
Yes.
I'm with you on the cliffs, not afraid of heights, so.
Listen, Jerm.
Oh, boy.
Tough combo.
Yeah.
Tough combo.
On to the next.
On to the next slide.
Moving right along here.
Really sharing today.
Cliff's insurance. The title for a book.
To sum up this whole budget request presentation, it is a 3.9% increase. We do feel it's fiscally responsible and will help us move forward. We know that it's going to be a 2-year to 3-year process of building back. It supports our students, our families, and it allows, we think, the possibility for people to grow academically, socially, and emotionally. Overall, it becomes a budget of $33,319,15. And that brings us to questions. But we know that as we look toward meeting with the Financial Oversight Committee, that we're always looking to work with the town and be fiscally responsible. And I think the 2 previous years have shown that. There was a willingness 2 fiscal years ago when we had no idea where the pandemic would take us. We reduced our budget by close to $1 million, our budget request that year.
Any other questions from the committee? There's 2 people online, but none of them raised their hands to ask any additional questions either. I haven't seen any.
Okay.
So then
Stop sharing the screen.
we have some minutes to approve.
I move to approve the April 11th, 2022 executive session meeting minutes.
Right, motion made by Bill,
Second.
second by Beth. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and that motion carries 4-0. One more set of minutes.
Move to approve the April 11th, 2022 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Bill,
Second.
second by Beth. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay, and that motion also carries 4-0. Thank you. Committee and subcommittee reports. Beth, you want to start tonight? Okay.
I should.
I'm good.
I made it out to the varsity lacrosse game over April vacation. They didn't come out with a victory over Agawam, but they certainly put up a good fight. And it was great to see, again, spectators and families and students out enjoying the fields and enjoying very cold night, but
Sorry.
also a very spirited one. So happy to be able to get out and see some of our athletes in action. Greg?
Just the wall ball, check it out.
Yeah.
Over by the stadium, pretty cool. Ton of kids on it, which is great.
Great to see.
Yeah, while the games are going on, there's kids down there firing and, being kids, so that was great. I imagine we're gonna fence it in, we'll finish the fence, is that the plan? Okay. But good to see something funded in town, something new addition, community preservation funds, I believe.
And
Jeff Morneau shepherded that along too, so good addition.
Would they please do a hard fence around that?
That's what Mr. Thompson was just asking. So I believe that was the plan, but I will double check that.
It's a weird setup. There should be a gate next to the wall because they go back. I don't know how they're going to do it, but we're going to have to secure the field, which we can now. So
Yeah.
The field though is technically open.
is it? We never lock it.
It's rare that we.
Oh,
lock it.
okay.
Yeah.
But the main gate's always open.
That's what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
main gate we
Yeah.
usually leave open because we have throughout all hours of the day, people utilizing the
Yeah,
track,
true.
exercising.
But you don't want anybody to take, because you could drive into that right now, or you could, whereas the main gate is closed and locked, you can still get through the side. But with it open like that, they do need to at least secure the side that's on the,
The other side.
so you could maybe walk through it, but not get a,
Not drive through it.
drive through it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, now it's,
Yeah.
So I will check on the fencing.
Right, this is now the opportunity for visitors to address the committee. There are a few folks watching online, so if anyone watching there would like to address the committee, now is the time. Just raise your hand. Okay, and there doesn't seem like anyone looking to speak directly to us this evening, so we'll move forward with the third quarter financial report from Ms. Claire.
Okay, so in your packet, is the third quarter financial report. It's a spreadsheet that's designed as a financial update for the FY22 school budget as of the third quarter, dated March 31st, 2022. Report also includes your grants and your revolving accounts. Just as a reminder, looking at the budget spreadsheet on page 5, all of these salary accounts are in the top section of the page. Most salaries are encumbered at the beginning of the year, as I always remind everyone. However, you will see that some line items have balances remaining. This is typically due to hourly or temporary employee salaries that do not get encumbered, as well as the athletic coaches, advisors, and department heads. However, I do want to bring to your attention that the paraprofessionals, therapeutic staff, teachers, and substitute line items all have a higher than normal available balance. This is due to leave of absences or vacancy positions that have remained unfilled. You know, as you make your way down there, you'll see exactly what I'm referring to. The therapeutic staff, the teachers, substitutes is not encumbered, so you know some of that might come down there. But those other three lines there, the paras, teachers, and therapeutic staff, I will be monitoring and discussing with you as time goes on, as we get closer to the end of the year, and maybe what we want to do with that. You know, as we talked about with the ESSER funding, there are items on there that perhaps we don't want to charge the ESSER, and journal entries could be done to offset these lines. So those will be conversations and decisions that you can make as we go on, okay? And your bottom section is your expense side of the budget. Right up here. You'll see the majority of the funds have been expended or encumbered. I anticipate the large available balances in the contracted services and educational supplies budget lines will continue to gradually be expended. I see that these really seem to be on point to where they should be for the fiscal year. And I do not foresee any issues there. I want to remind folks that the budget, and I do have an error in the written part here that I just want to correct for you all. I say that at the very bottom of page 5, you will see that the FY22 budget amount is $32,066,537. Of that amount, corrected amount, $19,714,180 has been expended. $10,291,823 has been encumbered, and $2,060,535 is available balance at the end of the third quarter. As always, I'll continue to monitor these accounts and bring any concerns to your attention. Does anyone have any questions on the operational budget?
And the negative in food services, was that going to be a fund transfer? Or?
So I did not have anything budgeted. This was an item that I was thinking to put to the ESSER, but then I thought maybe we should be funding it here since I have the funds available.
Yeah.
Rather than so I didn't have anything budgeted, so I wanted to show you that we have helped food service, you know, with about $40,000 in supplies. Luckily, when I go to the next page, you'll see that food service balance is finally getting to where, you know, a more normal balance, where she's not so nervous that if something, you know, were to happen, that some major appliance breaks down or something. So yes, we have been helping her with all of those costs.
Do we know if they're gonna be offering free?
So, you know, there's discussions about it. Do you know for sure, Sarah?
I thought I saw a press release that they were transitioning.
They're pretty close to okaying it for next year.
I anticipate that it's going to be Massachusetts. I think now it's state by state, and I think Massachusetts has brought it forward. I don't think it's been officially voted yet, but my gut's telling me that it probably is. Our, you know, economically disadvantaged families are much higher than they have been before for a lot of reasons. Inflation, we all feel it. I mean, I can't go to the grocery store without just dropping $100 and it's $2. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, like inflation is crazy. Along with,
not to jump ahead on that, ma'am, but is that the receipts on the school lunch at 7:33?
So let me hop over then to the.
Is that federal? That's not the 7:33? Is that where that comes from?
Where are you, Greg?
In the school lunch.
Yeah.
22 receipts.
Last page.
The 733 are that is
federal
all funding. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Normally that would be lunch.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Exactly. A combination of federal funds and you know, lunch receipts. But no, that is right now all just money's coming in from, and they are recognizing that that there's an issue. There's a lot of issues, as you've heard me talk about throughout this fiscal year, with shortage of staff, a shortage of supplies. Lori Paul has done a great job. I always plug to her and her folks. They've done a wonderful, wonderful job for us. They have been so flexible. You know, if you see things changing on the menu, it is because it is out of their control. They literally, the food is not coming in, or the supplies. So, and the supply costs, everything has been just exorbitant. So we have helped her, and also they have given a small additional funding to school lunch. I'm trying to remember how much. It was like $40,000 that went right to her account in the receipts, which was nice. So the whole point, the state is recognizing as well that there's a lot of, challenges for food service.
Now, would they,
As we, go ahead.
I'm sorry, would they be offering, I know in the past they would offer for an additional cost, the smoothies, or they'd have the cookies, or they would have, not.
I think Lori is hoping she can get back to
And she'll still
that.
be able to do that, even if we are offering free lunches, they'll still be
Oh, sure, because that
extra
would be
things,
a la
because I
carte.
wasn't
So
sure. if it was gonna be
that would have to be separate. And I believe she is
Because I
trying
think the
to
kids are looking forward to it.
work on
They're
that.
hoping.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're trying to get back to, as normal as she can. But again, that's not official. I don't know for sure, but as soon as we do know, we will let everyone know. And the way that we still track that, just so that everyone knows, wherever people were before the pandemic regarding your free, reduced, or pay status, we still keep that in our internal system because the state still wants that information. And we get monthly or quarterly, however often our food service director, Lori Paul, goes in, direct certified lists, because we all know life can change quickly. People lose jobs, people, whatever may happen. They need some help for whatever reason. So the state has tried to expedite that and just simplify the process so that we can just get this direct certified list and we get the information so the folks don't even have to fill out a free and reduced lunch application. Now, having said that, if you're one of those people that didn't maybe go onto this direct certified, but you maybe are struggling, you can always still fill out that, and we will work with you to identify if maybe we can help you in another way. So does that make sense? I just thought people should know that
So they just
we
set
are
that
still.
automatically, like, so if somebody didn't want people to know
Yeah.
that maybe they
Well,
were,
it's all
it just
confidential.
happens,
When I
but it
say-
just comes automatically to you, whether you
It
ask for it or
does,
not.
but it is direct
kind of-
certified. It's very confidential through the DESI security portal. There's very, very limited people that have that information, and
I know, but
They
that's
can-
still,
I
I
know.
feel from a standpoint of, some people just want their business. I'm surprised. I mean, I'm happy they're doing it because I think it helps us and it helps them
I
and
think
all of that, but it just seems a little.
a few years ago, we did have a family, I think, that wanted to be taken off of that list.
Yeah.
So if that were to happen, then that's a conversation we would have with the food service director. And, we always be very respectful and work with them. All right. So are we done on the operational budget? I can flip over then to the grants and the revolving. Okay. So your federal grants are at the top. As you recall, we did roll over some from FY21, so I still listed those there that were just being still finishing up, okay? And then we go into our FY22 grants. Again, as we talked about the ESSER grants, all grants are the same way. We have a plan and we put that through in an application. And if things were to change and it's more than a 10% from a line item, then we need to do an amendment to DESI is the process for that. So you'll see, okay, here's the ESSER 2 that we were just talking about. So right now I'm seeing $92,000 available right there. And you'll see that we have expended $742,000. I think that was your question, Greg, before on ESSER 2. And we've encumbered $131,405. Some of those could be salaries and some of those are expenses. It's a mixture there. If you wanted further detail, I just would have to analyze that and get that for you. But as of right now, there's $92,000 remaining there. As I said to you, we do have funds in the operational side, so we may want to have those conversations. Okay. All these grants are on target to where they should be. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to bring one thing to your attention. Over on the left-hand side here, you will see that every year DESI does analyze all the accounts, and if they have monies remaining from different sources that for whatever reason they ended up with additional, like for private schools maybe that didn't take the money, or they then divvy it up to the districts accordingly. So from the original amount that I gave you that you approved, these have now been increased a little bit. So that Title I grant has been increased by $79. That is a new, I know, but we'll take it. There, that new amount there, $283,789 is the new revised amount, okay? And the same thing with Title IIA, that was increased by $441. So that's $50,351 now. Special ed early childhood increased by $65, $18,297 is that new amount. Special ed IDEA grant increased by $3,706, bringing it to $806,508. Yes, that's a large grant. The bulk of that goes to out-of-district tuitions, as we spoke about $750,000 goes to out-of-district tuitions. The ARP IDEA 252 grant increased by $680, bringing that new amount to $135,920. The IDEA ARP 264 grant, which I think this one might be the preschool end of IDEA, increased by $633. The new amount, $12,663. That's it for the increases. Oh, the next one is down there at the state grants. The state grant, the METCO increased by, that's a larger amount, $15,550. So the new amount is $333,538. I remember that's a combination of salaries that covers and transportation. Okay, so if we just go, does anyone have any questions on the federal grants that were up on that first section there? Should have asked before I jumped on. Then we have the state grants in that middle section. As I just said, we have the METCO, which we get every year. We have that DPH grant that I spoke about earlier. The workforce diversification, that's been expended. Teacher diversification pilot program, that has not been expended yet, but I think that Mrs. Brown,
Just need to cover it.
yeah, okay, we just need to encumber those funds.
I just offer, so the SOA, educator workforce diversification, just so people understand that one, that's the Student Opportunity Act that you hear about every now and again. So that's part of your Chapter 70 funding. And so that's going to not only this year, it's helping us with the workforce diversification. And the Student Opportunity Act is something that all districts have to file.
Right, this was a competitive grant though, so this was.
Oh, this is an addition
This
to
one
Yes,
was
yes, that had to be aligned to one of your initiatives.
on the Student Opportunity Act.
Correct.
Thank you. But one of the things that I wanted to say, and I didn't say in the budget hearing as I was looking at that, is that your preschool expansion and transition to a new model, that's also something that is part of our Student Opportunity Act. We looked at what the district was attempting to accomplish, and then as we wrote our Student Opportunity Act plan, we tried to match some of the initiatives that we already had in place that made sense. And so we knew we were moving on the preschool. We knew that we were working to diversify our staff through looking at our recruitment, hiring, and retention practices. And what was the third thing, Mrs. Brown? Student opportunity. Preschool was big for this year.
Preschool, diversification. There's so many things in there.
Curriculum's in there, but I think it's under professional development, depending on how the other grants go. Yeah. So it was just something I wanted to, it's something that does not get discussed frequently, but I wanted to bring it to your attention that it is intertwined not only in grants we're using this year, but also in how our outlook is for next year.
Great, thank you. And then you have your private grants on the bottom there, which is pretty straightforward. We have just a little bit of funding left there. So I work with them to gently remind them to get some purchase orders in so you can get the funds expended. So again, you're going to see that grant total, $5.8 million, which does include that $2.2 million that we talked about of ESSER 2 funding, which has not been touched yet, which will end up being rolled over into next year. So right now we have available $3,053,355 there in grants. Any other questions on the grants before I move on? Your revolving accounts are on the bottom section of this page, and I always list what was carried forward, and then your receipts, your expenditures, and then your available balance. The athletic revolving is right now at a current balance of that $40,000, so that's good. The athletic stadium, that had $29,000, and I just received, I think on Thursday, an email from the town requesting those funds that you had already voted and allocated, the $28,000. So on the last quarter, you will see that those funds, you'll only have $1,000 there. So that again was really good because that was a community preservation.
It's community preservation.
Project, and we so appreciate all of that partnering, and we're glad that we could help with that. So the $28,000 is gone now. Each school has a rental account. We talked about that. So those are just cumulative all together there on the total that you see. So that has $120,000. The mobile technology, $49,000, which sounds like a lot, but again, that's top heavy. We talked about that, the fact that, as the year goes on and as the years go on, that will come down as parents have purchased like 2 or 3 or even 4 years of insurance. It's been a very successful program. Again, the same thing with the staff technology repairs. And just as a reminder, we do get those funds from the ELEA. They actually fund that for the staffing, and then we just oversee it here. Okay. eLeaf accounts. I work with those folks, trying to, again, give them gentle reminders to, get their different projects in and the supplies in that they need, the orders. Tuition revolving account. You'll see that does have a balance of $191,000. We talked about that perhaps that could be a possible funding source to help with the preschool that we're going to be talking about in the very near. Well, we just talked about the last meeting, right? But those conversations will continue. Circuit breaker. At this point, there's 2 quarters in here. The 3rd quarter did not come in yet. So that always happens. It kind of comes in a few days into the next month there. So you'll see that does have that $600,000 balance, which is great because we also talked about the fact that we want to be able to roll that over so that we can have that for those unforeseen circumstances that can arise with special education. We do not want to have to go back to town council to have to, ask for additional funding if we get students that come in. I mean, we would prefer not to have to do that, right? So I'm pleased to have that balance there. Transportation revolving, you'll see we applied the $100,000 towards the transportation, leaving $35,000 in there as a balance right now to offset and help for next year rollover. School lunch, that's where we were talking about before, and you'll see that balance is now at $244,910, which is just about where it must be, that it should be at. Desi always gives guidelines, or the nutritional gives guidelines on how much should be in there. And you always want to make sure that you can handle any unforeseen circumstance like, ovens going and big ticket items. So I'm pleased to see that there. And lastly, your school choice line. We talked about that we had FY21 15 students, FY22 10 students. Right now that's at $159,380. Are there any questions on any of the revolving accounts? Thank you.
Right, so we need a motion to accept with the amendments to the first page, correct?
Thank you, yes. And those corrected grant amounts, those revised grant amounts as well. Thank you.
I move to accept the March 31st, 2022 FY22 quarterly financial report with the corrections made to page 1.
Page.
Oh,
Yes.
and the revised grant amounts. Thank you.
Motion made by Beth,
Second.
second by Greg. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 4-0. And last, we have our MOA from executive.
I move to approve the custodial association contract dated 3-year contract dated July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025 as stated.
Okay, motion made by Beth,
Second.
second by Bill. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 4-0 as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Don. Heather, Pam, Kathy. Committee. All that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion made by Bill,
Second.
second by Beth. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Good night.